Hey stargazers, welcome back for another week of Astro weather. How are we all doing out there? Thinking clearly? Communicating directly? Perhaps not. But we're going to do things a little bit differently today. As you can clearly see, Mercury is very much in the spotlight one way or another over the next upcoming months. So I thought we'd take a deep dive into that, explore it a bit and see how it will maybe impact our mental health. But mostly, I'm completely in love with this little picture of Mercury here. Look at it, look. Who? Me? Yeah, you, Mercury, you and your shenanigans. So we're going to do a deep dive into what he's up to over the next few months. But I mean, as you can clearly see here, we've hit Gemini season. We're going to be there until the 21st. The North Node, of course, is sat in Gemini until January the 22nd of next year. But on top of all of that, we've got our Mercury retrograde cycle beginning in the sign of Gemini. He's also going to be squaring Neptune 3 times during this retrograde period. And we have our full lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. So along the 3-9 continuum, all in all, that's a lot of Mercury, and in particular a lot of Gemini. But firstly, major apologies for the way I sound. Hay fever season has hit, and I live by a shitload of trees, so please bear with me. Hopefully it'll settle itself down in a short while, but I'm so sorry. But anyway, yes, generally speaking, we're all under this heightened awareness, I would say, of all things mercurial. Our thoughts, communication, talking, reading, writing, classifying, and understanding the world in this very empirical sense. This goes here, that's called that. I know this to be true, I know this is right, I know this is wrong. One of the most fundamental ways we begin to understand the world as children a lot of the time. And Gemini is always looking to forever seek, understand and know its surroundings. Like a never-ending quest, really. Ultimately, hopefully, coming to the realization that it can't know everything all of the time, that it needs this kind of solid framework of some description to center itself on its travels around the matrix reality it continually constructs for itself. So get comfortable, grab a cup of tea or a strong cup of black coffee if you make like me, and we'll begin to take a look at what's coming our way over the next few weeks. So we'll begin with our Mercury retrograde cycle. He's already in shadow period at the moment and will station retrograde on the 29th of May. Go backwards for a while until he then stations prograde again on the 23rd of June, and the shadow period, the other side, will last until the 7th of July. And so with our retrograde, Mercury will be functioning differently. This outward focus of Mercury, what's the world up to, what's it doing, how can I understand it, is really swiveled right around. And if we remember, one of the whole points of a Mercury retrograde is to get your communication rooted back to you internally and ultimately to source. So you're being asked to listen to yourself. And quite frankly, I think that's a good thing. I think we can spend a lot of time dodging being alone with our thoughts, can't we? But this is very much the area we're being called back to, certainly with Mercury in Gemini. So our usual ability to, or level of external awareness and interaction can be decreased, deliberately so, or by design. Don't forget that the world isn't plotting against you, it's conspiring with you. So this can obviously manifest itself with that level of external awareness and interaction being decreased. Hence our conversations and constructs can be just a little out of reach and elusive at times. Yeah, this transit speaks to me very much of our self-talk, our internal dialogue. How do you treat yourself, you know? Do you try to be your friend? Are you overly critical, defensive, analytical with yourself, we can really be shown here how we mentally relate to ourselves in our Mercury retrograde echo chamber, and equally how forgiving we are of ourselves when we don't function as we feel we should, you know. Mercury retrograde can really disrupt this me out in the world, being with people ethos. How do you cope with that? Let's not forget that typically speaking, Mercury is a very dynamic, outward facing energy. And so if we're not careful, we can get lost in this frustration of why can't I? So it might help if we treat this as a time to monitor our thoughts, get to know ourselves, assess our self-awareness. I think Eckhart Tolle, be the observer. I feel like I always say that, but it's good advice generally, isn't it? If all else fails, pull Eckhart out of the bag. But honestly, I think being the observer might come into play here, which is needed. So just be aware that the universe is really trying to help you focus on you. And I know sometimes in our harder, faster, more cultures, it's difficult to honour that time, isn't it? It's difficult to say, actually, I need to be here right now. I need to be here with me. I need to internalize. I get really quite saddened that society can't honour the cycles that are so apparent for us, that are so here for us. So if you can't take that time for yourself, I just send you so much love. It's unreal. But just be gentle with yourself, be compassionate with yourself. If you're out in the world, if you have to communicate, you have to be out there, and you're struggling a bit under this planetary weather, just please take at least 10 minutes to check in with yourself and know that this is happening for a reason. If you want to take a deeper dive into the specifics for you, take a look at the condition of your own Mercury. What house is he sat in? How fast is he? What sign is he in? And also have a look, see what planets you've got along Gemini, Sag, and equally Pisces and Virgo, because they will possibly be brought into the mix too. So yeah, a very interesting Mercury retrograde cycle we've got. And of course, let's not forget that quite often the retrograde cycles will bring things back to you. To re-examine, to look at what have you missed the first pass around. So get ready to take another look, a more internalized examination of situations that you've perhaps found yourself in. And really interesting that having Mercury retrograde in Gemini is kind of speaking about our self-talk, how we relate to ourselves, and understanding that part of our lives, because we've also got these Mercury and Neptune squares going on between 22 and 23 degrees. Our first one was yesterday on 22nd. Our next one will be on the 6th of June when Mercury is retrograde, and our final one will be on the 7th, interestingly, when Mercury's shadow period ends. And Neptune's retrograde period will begin. So again, check your houses, check your planets and points to see what might be affected here for you, as well as the natal condition of your own Neptune. And what we mean by that is the condition of the planet in your natal chart is how you will receive that planetary energy. Yeah, it's your filter for that planetary energy. And Neptune, being a slower mover, is a generational planet, so you will have that kind of theme or vibe in common with a lot of people. Where it becomes personalized for you is the house it sits in and the aspects it makes to perhaps some of the faster moving planets. And so this is going to be an interesting one. We've already made the first square, and that one was really quite wibbly wobbly. We also had white moon, Selene in the mix in Sag, And so our logic, our intuition, and our gut knowing were all kind of squaring off against each other. And this initial, this is where I want you to look, people, kind of message from the universe. Thanks for that. So moving forward, we're going to have this tension between our left brain function and our just universal acceptance, our compassion, our ability to be with others. Can you see how the two are kind of skewed at the moment? This kind of balance and acceptance of ourselves as well is really needed. And this is kind of really speaking of, yes, your feelings are valid. Of course your feelings are valid. How can they not be? They are there. But are you assessing situations as they should be? Are you assessing them through a hazy lens? Yeah, quite often we can see delusion under Neptune. So we can be oversensitive. Words can cut deep, especially if they're a bit wonky under a Mercury retrograde, right? And we can consider external communication isn't a priority in Mercury retrograde. There is that potential for trouble. Conversely, we can be more gullible than we'd like to be under a Neptune square, and perhaps fall foul of situations that maybe seem a little bit too good to be true. There's that old adage, isn't there? If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. And I don't like to say that to people because I do like to believe in the art of the possible. But these are tricky squares, so just keep that one in mind. We can have a tendency to want to think everything is perfect, everything's great. So we've kind of got two really distinct sides of the coin here, with the hazy, rosy tinted glasses of Neptune and the what the hell is happening in the world, Mercury retrograde. It can be a bit tough to navigate. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that final square, with it being the last days of the Mercury shadow period. But yeah, I think perhaps we said cultivate your inner Lebowski. Remember, you know, the human journey, it's just a ride, isn't it? Yeah, that's perhaps the more positive side of Neptune, isn't it? And ultimately, you know, we can use these squares well. We can use them to see our thought lent that compassion, yeah, our love for fellow man and for ourselves. Mercury can give it perhaps a little bit more direction and honing and tweaking, make it a bit less nebulous, more constructed in its thinking. And it might be a difficult process, that the tension is higher in a square, but we certainly can use them to our advantage if we remain aware. And I think as well, it's really important to remember that Neptune aspects can be a bit tricky, again, by design. Because they're a journey that we don't quite get at the time. To me, Neptune, and most things 12th house actually, is an incredibly retrospective planet. It's busy doing things right in front of your face that you don't get until after the fact, purely because of the way it works. Yeah, it breaks down, it dissolves, and when it's in the middle of dissolving things, you just get this swirly, hazy mist. It doesn't work like Uranus. It does things slowly. It causes that deliberate confusion, and that deliberate confusion is there to make you trust the process. Neptune calls for trust, it calls for faith, remember? So hang in there, kids. It's going to be an interesting ride, and just perhaps the advice I would offer here, if you can, I know it's difficult, just don't be so attached to your human experience. Yeah, there's so much more to you as a soul than the body you're in. It's beautiful as your human is. There's a whole other side of you that perhaps you're not necessarily so aware of. Yet these two sides, the soul, the body, the mind, they're all going to be mixing. They're all going to be meeting each other. over these next few weeks. So see how that all plays out for you. And you know, there's a part of me that's quite enjoying this meandering. I feel that we, or at least I, am being taught a lot about control at the moment, and how sometimes you just have to go with the flow. You know, you can't categorize, understand everything, put everything in the world in boxes, or you'll just be exhausted. You need that framework, and also, where's the excitement in knowing and understanding everything? And I think here we can really pull into that Sagittarian energy, can't we? That framework, that intuitive truth, that roaming element. And unless you've been living in limbo or a cave these past couple of weeks, and good on you if you have, by the way, you'll know that we're heading into eclipse season, which, in accordance with our nodal axis, will be centered around the 3-9 polarity of knowledge, facts, truth, and wisdom. So on the 26th of May, we will have our full moon lunar eclipse at 5 Sag, a game of cricket, according to our Sabian oracle. And this particular lunar eclipse belongs to Saros series 121, which began in 1047 AD and will be completed in 2508 AD. How about that, to realise your finiteness as a human being, eh? Puts us all into perspective, doesn't it? This particular full lunar eclipse is pretty important because it's the final full moon lunar eclipse of this cycle. Its predecessor was on the 16th of May 2003. So what was happening for you then, guys? So let's remember, astronomically speaking, we get our lunar eclipse when the moon is near or exact a full moon, with the Earth exactly between the sun and the moon. And we see the shadow of the planet play out across the face of our lunar compadre. So we have the opposition of the moon and the sun. Our environment, our filter, is opposed to our emotional security. And if we think of the moon as that point within us all, which resonates around our emotional comfort and security, which can go back lifetimes, not just this one, it's here we can store really deeply a part of ourselves we might not like too much. We can be shown a lot. We might not necessarily want to see it from our egotistical level, but equally our lunar eclipses are associated with endings. So lunar eclipses can often speak to us being made to be aware of and subsequently own our own shit. Let's not forget that Saturn's retrograde too right now, bringing back to us that which some of us might want to stay away from our lives. A bit like a shitty boomerang. Anyway, eclipse season is an interesting one, and my experience of them has been an all bets are off kind of attitude. You can't predict how they're going to land because they are of a series and a pattern that's just so massive. Yeah. So I'd be really healthily cynical of anybody being adamant that they know exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and how it's going to happen astrologically with eclipses. I really like Brady's approach to them, which keeps it very broad, looking at the sign and the house, the polarities. So just to give you an example, this lunar eclipse will be along my 11th and my 5th houses, and ultimately culminate in my 10th and my 4th. So go and check out your houses, because that will be the kind of key areas for you if these eclipses do anything at all. They don't always act, but when they do, they can be irrevocably life-changing. They are a real wild card, yeah. And again, we're being called, aren't we? Go with the flow. You can't control this one. So yeah, given that we have the lunar eclipse in Sagittarius playing out across the Gemini Sag, traditionally 3-9 polarity, what can we make of this? So normally I hold Sagittarius in quite high regard, and although ruled by gregarious, benevolent Jupiter, I kind of see a Sag archetype as a bit more like Ron Swanson. For those of you that have watched Parks and Recreation, you'll know what I mean by this. Someone who knows their truth, has their ways, lives very much in accordance with nature, will not tolerate interference, quite private, likes to roam, and hates government and politics. That's Sag, and I kind of have a lot of time for that as a way of being. But that's not to say it doesn't come without its issues, yeah? Sagittarius can be really quite belligerent. I don't have to prove anything to you. It can get stuck in its own attitudes, and it can mistake truth for opinions. And it can be pretty judgmental, stuck in its own prejudices. So if we're to surmise anything from this lunar eclipse, we might be showing where our own prejudices lie, where we've been stuck in outdated or narrow-minded behaviour. Sag needs to roam, so of course, you know, our freedom to move about, our travel restrictions could all come up and be faced. But Sagittarius needs space. If it's not allowed to roam and collect all the feels from the universe, it can get quite stagnant. Equally, if left too alone, it doesn't really have anyone to bounce off. And that's the beauty of Gemini, really. It provides those kind of multidimensional views, different ways of being, and new perspectives. So between the two, we have this kind of continuum of knowledge and understanding that's going to be affected during the eclipse season, as well as potentially very physically, if we remember that these two as mutable signs, they need to roam, they need to move about, they can't stagnate. And so if we look at the Sabian symbol for this, which can seem rather bland, can't it? You know, a game of cricket, or whoop-de-doo for eclipses, right? But I think we have the perfect centre or the perfect pivot here between the 3-9, don't we? Yeah, we're out in nature, we're appeasing our Sag, we're playing games. I think Sag would approve of this, but there's a team of us, yeah, with rules of engagement and a game to learn and mentally comprehend with our fellows on the lawn. And equally, we can all sit and get a bit squiffed up afterwards. Hooray! It's all quite mild, really, but it fits the need for balance, I think, to draw on this polarity as we expunge the old and the outdated, as we allow ourselves to see our shadow, as we allow ourselves to pick at that and assess it. What needs to be healed within ourselves? What prejudices do we have? What fears have we have that our prejudices have caused that we're not able to get past, that have kept us stuck and stagnant and unable to move? Yeah. How do we allow ourselves that freedom to roam, to shake off the shackles of fear? That's all going to be coming up for us with this eclipse season, guys. So yes, I shall love you and leave you with that one. Thanks for sticking with us. Hopefully you got something from that one. I know these are potentially testing times, but if we can perhaps put a reframe on that and see them as interesting times, we might get through them, eh? Remember, you can check out Instagram if you want more daily doses of astro information. You can also head over to the website and book a reading if you want to, or check out the courses we've got going on there. But otherwise, enjoy your day. Be peaceful, be gentle with yourselves. Remember, you are so very loved, and this is just a ride. Take care, guys, and I'll see you soon.